was a crisp autumn morning in Cedar Hill, a quiet suburban town tucked between rolling hills and sleepy maple trees. Parents rushed their kids into classrooms, coffee in hand, never imagining that this day would scar their town forever. 5-year-old Mia Carter, a bright, giggly little girl with pigtails and pink sneakers, walked into Maple Grove Kindergarten, holding her mother's hand for the last time. She was excited about Art Tuesday, the day they painted leaves and made paper turkeys. Rachel Carter kissed her daughter's forehead, told her she'd be back after lunch, and that was the last time anyone saw Mia alive. The school was buzzing with the usual noise. Kids laughing, crayons snapping, teachers calling roll, until around 17 a.m. when Mia asked to use the restroom. Her teacher, Mrs. Sanders, smiled and nodded. But when she didn't return after a few minutes, the teacher went to check on her. The restroom was empty. The stall doors were open. Even her little pink hairband sat on the sink like it had been placed there deliberately. The teacher searched every hallway, every closet, and even the fenced-in playground out back. But there was nothing. No sound, no movement, no Mia. It was as if the air itself had swallowed her whole. When police arrived minutes later, they treated it like a missing child case. But something about the scene didn't make sense. The security cameras near the restroom had been mysteriously disabled around the exact time Mia disappeared. There were no signs of a break-in, no footprints leading out, no vehicles seen leaving the parking lot. The principal insisted no one had entered or exited through the back gate. It was locked from the inside. Still, somewhere between her classroom and the restroom, Mia Carter vanished without a trace, leaving behind only silence and a mother who refused to believe her little girl was gone. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly bled into months. The town of Cedar Hill changed after Maya's disappearance. Parents began walking their kids to school again, locking doors that had once been left open, and whispering about what might have happened to the little girl who vanished without a sound. The once colorful kindergarten building stood like a ghost at the edge of town, its windows dark, the playground empty. Rachel Carter couldn't bring herself to leave Cedar Hill. Every night, she sat on Maya's bed, perfectly made, untouched, and stared at the small night light that still glowed in the corner. She swore sometimes she could hear her daughter humming softly, the same tune she used to sing before falling asleep. Police had followed every lead, every tip, every rumor. They drained the creek behind the school, searched nearby woods with cadaver dogs, and even questioned staff members for months. Nothing. The case eventually went cold. The media stopped calling. The flyers on telephone poles faded under the rain. Rachel's husband, unable to bear the pain, packed his things one night and left without saying goodbye. "You have to move on," he'd said quietly before the door shut behind him. But Rachel couldn't. To her, moving on felt like betrayal, as if by letting go, she'd be accepting that her daughter was never coming home. So she became obsessed. Her living room turned into a command center, walls covered in maps, photographs, timelines, and theories. She started learning about new tracking technologies, crime databases, and digital tracing. She bought Apple tags, tiny tracking devices she placed on every toy, every doll, every item that once belonged to Mia, just in case any of them ever appeared somewhere unexpected. People in town called her crazy, a woman who couldn't face reality. But Rachel didn't care. Somewhere deep down, she believed Mia was still out there, and she was determined to find her. no matter what it took. It was exactly 1 year to the night since Maya's disappearance, when Rachel's phone buzzed on her nightstand. She almost didn't check it. Another spam alert, she thought. But then she saw it, Apple tag detected nearby. For a few seconds, her mind went blank. The device ID was one of the tags she'd attached to Maya's favorite stuffed bunny, a small gray rabbit with a torn ear. The signal was faint but active, blinking from a location that made Rachel's stomach drop. It was pinging from Maple Grove Kindergarten, the same building that had been locked and abandoned since the investigation ended. The school had no electricity, no staff, no reason for anyone to be inside. So why was an Apple tag suddenly active after a whole year of silence? Rachel sat frozen on her couch, watching the location pulse on her phone's map. It wasn't moving. It was fixed to one spot. The signal coordinates pointed directly to classroom B, the same room where Maya's backpack was found the morning she disappeared. She zoomed in closer, her hands shaking, and noticed something strange. The dot wasn't on the surface level. It was marked below the floor, a basement, a crawl space, but the school had neither, at least not according to the blueprints she'd memorized months ago. A chill crawled up her spine. It felt impossible, like something or someone was playing a cruel joke. But the app kept beeping every few seconds, steady and certain, like a heartbeat coming from underground. She called the local police department, but no one picked up. The dispatcher line went straight to voicemail. Midnight rain was hammering against the windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. Rachel stared at the phone, torn between fear and the chance, however slim, that it might lead her to Mia. Finally, she grabbed her keys, flashlight, and her old brown jacket, and stepped into the storm. The roads were slick and nearly empty as she drove toward the edge of town, her headlights slicing through sheets of rain. The entire way there, the signal stayed locked in place, 1 meter beneath classroom B, pulsing like a whisper in the dark. Rain dripped from the ceiling as Rachel stepped into the decaying building of Maple Grove Kindergarten. The door groaned open with a metallic shriek, echoing through the empty halls. Her flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, catching glimpses of peeling paint, overturned chairs, and faded children's drawings still taped to the walls. The smell of mildew and dust hung thick in the air, mixed with something else, something sour and rotten. The air felt heavier in there, like the building was holding its breath. Every footstep echoed too loudly, bouncing off the walls as if someone else was walking beside her. When she reached classroom B, her heart was pounding so hard, she could hear it in her ears. She knelt near the center of the room, checking the Apple tag signal again. The screen glowed faintly in the dark, and the small blinking dot pulsed stronger now. Only a few feet away, Rachel moved the beam of her flashlight across the floor, stopping when she saw a spot where the linoleum was bubbled and warped. The air above it felt cold, almost unnaturally so. She set her phone down, dropped to her knees, and began clawing at the floor. The tiles cracked under her hands, flaking apart like dead skin. Beneath them, she found wooden boards, old, splintered, and loose around the edges. Her hands trembled as she pulled harder, her fingernails breaking against the wood. Then, something small rolled out from between the cracks. A pink plastic hair clip, shaped like a butterfly. Rachel froze. She knew it instantly. Maya had worn it the morning she vanished. Her breath hitched as tears blurred her vision. The flashlight trembled in her hand, its beam dancing across the torn floorboards. That was when she noticed the hollow sound beneath them. A faint, echoing emptiness when she tapped the wood. Her shaking hands reached for her car keys, using one to pry the plank loose. It came up with a loud crack, and a rush of cold air seeped out from below. She leaned over, shining the light into the gap. What she saw made her stomach twist. There was a narrow crawl space, no more than 2 feet high, running deep beneath the classroom. The walls were dirt, and something glimmered faintly down there. A small, blinking Apple tag. The light flickered on her face as she whispered her daughter's name for the first time in months. But the room stayed silent except for the soft, rhythmic tapping coming from somewhere below her feet. Rachel took a shaky breath and lowered herself into the crawl space. The air was damp and cold, heavy with the stench of mold and something metallic like rust or blood. The dirt walls pressed in close as she crawled forward, her flashlight flickering weakly. Each movement stirred the dust around her, coating her throat with grit. Behind her, the light from the hole in the floor faded until it was nothing but a small glow. All she could hear was her own heartbeat and the soft drip. Drip, drip of water somewhere in the darkness. Her phone buzzed once more. Apple tag nearby, 0.2 meters. The sound echoed like a whisper inside the confined space. She aimed her light toward the corner, and that's when she saw them. Children's drawings, tacked to the dirt walls with small nails. Crayon scribbles of houses, stick figures, and one picture of a little girl with brown hair and blue eyes standing in front of the same kindergarten building she was in now. Her breath came faster as she crawled deeper, trying not to panic. More objects appeared half buried in the dirt. Tiny shoes, broken toys, a small stuffed bunny missing one ear. Rachel's fingers brushed against the fur of the bunny, and her vision blurred. It was Maya's, the same toy she'd tucked into her daughter's backpack that morning a year ago. She looked around, realizing these weren't random items. They belonged to children. Children who might have vanished long before Mia did. The walls were covered with marks, tallies scratched into the dirt, uneven and countless. Her flashlight flickered again, catching a glint of metal deeper inside. The Apple tag signal pulsed stronger now, so close she could almost feel the vibration in her hand. She inched closer, heart hammering. At the far end of the crawl space stood a rusted steel door, its surface streaked with dark stains. The bolts on it were thick, but what unsettled Rachel most was that they were on the outside, as if something had been locked in, not out. She reached out, fingers trembling, brushing the cold metal handle. The smell was unbearable now, something rotting, old, and wet. Just as she wrapped her hand around the latch, her phone buzzed again. The screen lit up in the darkness. Apple tag moved device in motion. Her eyes widened. The signal that had been stationary under the floor for a year was now shifting toward her. The faint sound of footsteps, or maybe crawling, came from behind, echoing in the narrow tunnel. Then, cutting through the silence, came a small giggle, high-pitched, familiar. "Mama." Rachel froze in place, her entire body trembling. The flashlight flickered wildly as the sound behind her grew louder, small hands scraping against the dirt, slow and deliberate. Her breath hitched. "Maya," she whispered, voice breaking. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the dark, a tiny shadow crawled into the edge of her light. It was small, childlike. A pale face appeared, half covered in mud, eyes wide and unblinking. But something was wrong. The child's smile was too wide, her head tilting just a little too far to the side. Rachel's phone buzzed again in her shaking hand. The Apple Tag location updated. Device connected. New owner detected. She didn't understand what that meant until the light from her phone caught something glinting around the figure's neck. A thin silver chain, and dangling from it was the Apple Tag, the same one she'd hidden inside Maya's stuffed bunny. The girl stepped closer, whispering something Rachel could barely hear. "Mommy, I told you I'd come back." The flashlight went out. The next morning, police found Rachel's car, still running outside the old school. The building was empty. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. But when investigators lifted the floorboards in Classroom B, they discovered a new Apple Tag signal, one registered under Rachel Carter's name, blinking faintly from deep beneath the dirt.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.